Welcome to today's webinar, Getting Started with AI, webinar series for innovators. We're going to talk through the AI opportunity assessment from use cases to ROI. I'm Bob Klein, CEO of Digital Scientists. I'm thrilled to be your host for this session. Before we dive in, I just want to say how excited I am to see so many of you here today. Whether you're just starting your journey with AI or well on your way, it's inspiring to be part of a community of innovators eager to really explore the kind of new possibilities brought about by AI. Okay, just a little bit about me. I've spent about 30 years working across industries like logistics and digital health, and I really enjoy helping kind of organizations turn customer needs into technology-enabled solutions. More like basically helping people leverage technology to improve their lives. Right? Today's session is really targeted at people that want to make a difference and have an impact. It's all about giving you all practical tools and insights to evaluate AI in terms of the opportunities that they bring and kind of really an approach to align them with business goals. Okay. I'll address questions kind of along the way if they come up or at the end. Either would be fine. And I just want to thank you for joining us today. Look forward to a great session. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right. And share my screen. Bear with me. You all should be able to share my screen, see my screen, and I'm just going to move myself over here so you can see me. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, the series is called really Getting Started with AI. We have a previous session called an AI readiness workshop, and today's session is about AI opportunity assessments from use cases to ROI. Yeah, sorry for, I already covered some of this. So there are three parts to this series: the readiness workshop, the opportunity assessment, and the next one is MVPs for AI development, really kind of how to get started. First is organizational readiness. Today is kind of really building the business case for investments, how to prioritize what you're working on, and then actually kind of building things out in a really low risk approach. Some might say research, calibrate, create as a way to think about this. I covered a little bit about me personally, but like I said, I run a company called Digital Scientists. We're in Alpharetta, Georgia. This is one of the few images that actually was not AI generated, which is funny, but we really, our technology kind of strategy and innovation firm, we help companies implement technology, innovate, and really we're typically a bit behind the scenes, helping people get things done, but we really just want to be part of somebody else's success story. Here's a little bit about the team. I won't go into a lot of detail here. This is not what the point of today's discussion is. It's really, this is just a little bit of background. Well, why did we launch the webinar series? This is from the previous one. This is a recent kind of a SpaceX launch. I thought it was super cool. I thought launching rockets was a good metaphor. We're really help innovators get started and make progress. Sometimes there's a big gap between ambition and execution, and oftentimes you just need better tools and approaches. So now, why an AI opportunity assessment in specific? Well, you don't want to make the wrong choice, right? You don't want to make investments that don't pan out. You want to try and identify quick wins. You want to really address some of the risk that's inherent in AI, and kind of make sure your initiatives are aligned with your organization, and ultimately build a roadmap for where you want to go and how AI is going to impact your organization. There's a funny, I don't know y'all if there are any Muppet fans here, but I thought it was interesting because Dr. Honeydew from in Muppet Labs had a Gen AI kind of experiment go wrong, and it generated too many beakers. So yeah, that would be a big problem. So we're trying to avoid those kinds of risks. Now, the agenda for today, we have kind of a review of just a little bit of review from the first group, the first session where we talked about use cases. Then we go through generative AI value propositions. We talk about identifying specific use cases for ROI. And then we're going to walk through a couple different frameworks that I think will be helpful to kind of conduct your opportunity assessment. Provide an example of one, and then we talk a little bit at the end about a strategy framework for kind of moving forward. And at the end, I cover a little bit about how we conduct these opportunity assessments. But this overview is more for you to kind of understand, get some tools in your tool chest in terms of conducting this on your own. And this is a video I liked that was, if you can work in AI, if SpaceX can figure out how to how to catch a rocket coming back to the United States. All right, just a little bit of review from the first session. If y'all might recognize this slide, but I think it's always important for a level set about what do we mean by AI, and this could be really rudimentary for you all, but I think it's important to talk about artificial intelligence really incorporates machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI, right? So they can be very different in terms of their demands and needs for building models. Part of it is newer, kind of machine learning has been around for a much longer period of time, where generative AI is the new kid on the block, and is kind of generated all the hype in the last 2 years, right? So it gets more involved in content creation with the large language models, and it's still, is pretty disruptive. And some of us refer to machine learning as kind of old AI, and generative AI is new AI, like whatever. So we're going to talk a little bit more about generative AI in this discussion, just because it's top of mind, and it's probably what the C-suite is worried about, right? So, sorry. Now, this is also a kind of a high-level couple slides from the previous session, where we talked about common AI use cases and value proposition based on your industry vertical, which is fine, but I really wanted to get a little closer in and choose those use cases that might be kind of front and center. These might be kind of further down on your roadmap as some things that you want to pursue. But for some companies, and I would say their sessions may be a little more targeted at folks just trying to get started. And these are healthcare, robotic surgery. I would say we're not there yet, right? So there's not that there aren't opportunities there. They couldn't be on your roadmap, but just it's a little further out. And you have to kind of, what is it? Crawl, walk, run. So this is more for crawling. I'll skip ahead. So I wanted to pull in some insights from others that really just said, well, how are people doing it today? How are people leveraging AI today? I think there is this, for first movers, there is a sense that everybody's using it, everybody's doing it. That's not the case, right? There is a research paper from Cisco that came out this year that said that roughly just shy of 30% of large companies are actually blocking use of generative AI for fear of kind of security and privacy concerns, protection of intellectual property. So it looks like there are people leveraging it. There are firms that are leveraging it, but there are others that are kind of on the sidelines trying to figure it out, right, internally. And they don't want their employees kind of leveraging it because they're worried about the downstream effects, right? So, but those who are, this is a study from, I want to say BCG, Boston Consulting Group, where they talked about the domains, where is the value coming from AI investments? And they say it's core functions. So operations, sales and marketing, R&D, supply chain, right? So I would throw in customer service there too, right? So that covers where a lot of the value is coming. What they would look at it as business functions compared to support functions, right? So support being more of the kind of staff part of a enterprise, right? So it's there's value to the operational side of the business is one way to think about it. And that's where they're seeing investment and ROI. Let's look a little bit closer here. Here's a study from Menlo Ventures where it talks about actual spend in 2024 compared to 2023. And again, looks at some of that spend in millions of dollars across different parts of the organization, right? So building their own foundational models, huge increase, 6.5x, big investments in training, how to bring their staff up, spending on infrastructure, 8x, so big investments are happening in the enterprise. Part of it kind of horizontally across the whole organization. It could be we agreed to give every employee access to Microsoft Copilot, or even in a department level, right? So there's a 9x increase of this department needs this specific AI tool to get better. Could be helping, sales, productivity, whatever. So there's a lot of spend that's going on that's technically being categorized as generative AI spend. I would argue it's probably, and we'll get to this a little bit further on in one of these strategy frameworks, but it's a lot of it's upskilling and I would say foundational investments plus some tooling, right? So anyway, let's keep going. In that same study, and I'll provide access or references to these studies so you can go back and take a look at them, is this dominant generative AI use cases. This gets really closer in of, okay, where's the spend happening and for what specific use cases? And this is one way, to reduce risk is you follow kind of a well-trodden path, right? If you're getting your organization started. And just at a high level, what I'm talking about is this area of, what are the big use cases? Code generation. Well, who's that for? And we'll talk about each one of these. Support chatbots, so we've seen these things explode on the web. Half the time these days, I'm not sure if I'm talking to a real person or not. Enterprise search and retrieval. For many of us, we spend a lot of time dealing with documents, legal documents, financial documents, a lot of content all of us have on our share drives, on our hard drives, everything. How to get more productive in those areas is important. And combined with that is data extraction transformation. How do I find what I need, transform what I need, and put it in a format that's helpful? And then meeting summarization, so a big part of what we're doing these days is note-taking and saving people time. So I'll talk through each one of those as very quickly. Won't spend a bunch of time, but this is where others are investing. Okay, so very practical ROI-driven use cases, all right? And that's some of what we're going to talk about. Kind of to get started along those lines, I'm just going to take those first 5 and talk about each one, right? But initially it's, the first goal here is identify operational use cases with measurable ROI. You're like, oh, heck, how do I do that? Right? And this is the fox that couldn't couldn't get to the grapes, so it was like sour grapes. But these are grapes that you can actually reach. The idea is to focus on the low-hanging fruit use cases inside your organization to achieve quick wins, right? And things that are measurable in terms of savings, cost reduction, and outcomes. So this is kind of the crawl part of how do I get started? How do I show progress? And we're going to walk through each of those examples. So code generation was number one, far and away, right? So it essentially impacts areas of engineering, IT, DevOps, the coders, the developers. There are a lot of great tools out there. There's GitHub's Copilot, there's Cursor. There are things that are making our development teams, these teams way more productive, okay? So it reduces the time spent. It makes them, because they're more productive. It helps them with test cases. It helps them with kind of repetitive coding tasks. All that's an easy start if you're not already doing that. Yes, there has to be kind of an enterprise-wide approach to it to address any risks for risk mitigation. But the other thing that's available through some of these tools is making it kind of, the team will collectively get smarter about the best internal uses. Code generation is a pretty broad use case, right? So how does the development team, what's the best way to leverage those tools to make your development team as productive as possible? And then to measure the outcome, right? So that's when most folks are already starting down that path, and it'd be a good place if you haven't started. The next would be support chatbots, right? So customer support areas, things that touch customer service, IT support, HR. How do I reduce the response time, lower the cost of support, improve customer sat scores? These are, again, it's a very common use case. It can be very people intensive. It's really kind of a productivity enhancement for these folks, especially if they have repetitive tasks, if they're seeing the same problem over and over again. It's leveraging generative AI, even generative AI built on your own content, your own knowledge library, your own knowledge management resources, to make your team more effective, right? So next is enterprise search and retrieval. I was talking about knowledge management, operations, R&D. This is most of the organization, right? So big parts of your organization have siloed access to content. And any steps here to make them more efficient can save a lot of time. Now, for folks, for example, that have Microsoft Copilot and access to that, that's one of the tools that's common in the enterprise that helps people save time in accessing this kind of retrieval, right? So most organizations have enormous content stores, and it's difficult to find the right version of what you need. And I won't go on and on, but that's a pretty common use case and one that you could consider. I'm listing, I have some of these images here. Part of it's because they're so terrible. It's kind of funny to see what generative AI can come up with. Sometimes things are just incredible and beautiful, and they seem like there's videos and all these things that are possible, but then we get something that looks like that. It's kind of an atrocity. It's such a terrible image, but everything here is getting better over time, right? So it's getting better, but the point here is just this is a very common need. Another one is data extraction and transformation. There's a lot of reporting requirements. There's a lot of comparison, creation of relational reports or kind of longitudinal reports, giving people kind of generating insights, really. So it's like real-time decision insights, comparison reports, for those of us that have to create this kind of information, you know who you are, and it's a lot of this is driven off of BI platforms, spreadsheets. It's a little rough. It's not necessarily always within existing um, software or decent interfaces. So it's getting better in this area. There's a lot of time that goes into this kind of batch reporting or meeting specific reporting where you want to automate what we can, right? So it could save some time. The other thing is getting access to new content, right? So it could be unstructured content that can be structured and interpreted by AI, where previously it would have taken much too much time. So another thought there. An obvious piece here is actually um, manual data entry, how to reduce the need to that. So this kind of process automation aspect of using kind of AI to make that more efficient. All right, I think this is probably one of the most common ones, meeting summarization, Otter and Fathom and all the tools, even across healthcare, to summarize meetings. Most of us are meeting in meetings all day long. Everyone is kind of scribbling notes. It's hard to engage in the meeting. What are the action items? What was the decision? What were the decisions made? More and more, really, every meeting is going to be recorded. It just saves a lot of time, and it's a kind of a source of record for that meeting and the decisions made. It's it helps sales, client services, product management. It's just a lot. It's a productivity enhancement. And I have an example I'll share with you. So really, this is how to identify low-hanging fruit use cases. So this is repetitive, time-intensive tasks. How do you hone in on what are those things? And honestly, if I were getting started with an organization that had been on the sidelines, these are the places where I would start, right? Because others have already proven the ROI, and it's a lot of time savings and cost reduction and something you can point to justify the investment, right? So what you end up doing is assess what you've got and come up with what those options are. And I'm going to go through, we're going to walk through how to do that. This is this kind of a funny image. When you ask GPT to talk about low-hanging fruit, I get a tree that's got apples, oranges, and pears. That's kind of interesting. So yeah, a little bit of work to do there on the graphic side. So key takeaways, start where the ROI is easiest, identify the right kind of task to go after, and come up with pilot projects. Really, those are use cases, and we'll talk about how to, assess the opportunity at your organization. And then really what you're doing is, in those instances, you're trying to collaborate with the business to see what are the other opportunities, okay? And yeah, these images are kind of a groaner. All right, I got 2 examples for you, enough of those slides. Here's an example of meeting summarization. This happens to be a product that Digital Scientists built called healthcontext.ai, and it's summarization of a telehealth session for providers. And you see there, the number one benefit is save providers time, right? It generates it transcribes the telehealth session. It labels all of the session with medical terms and terminology, and then generates what's called a SOAP note, which is a standard protocol note for documentation for them to edit, right? So all about saving them time and helping them with documentation. Does that sound familiar? Next one is a little bit different. Another AI example case where for a large integrated health system in the Midwest, we helped with risk adjustment. And kind of, this is a little further up down the roadmap for some organizations. It would be not a common use case. This is a pretty narrow use case in healthcare, but a very important one. Leveraged a lot of additional data sources and had a big impact on workflows. But the interesting thing about this one was it generated 10x return in 1 year, right? So it was I take that back. It was a 20x return in 1 year. So it was unbelievable. And it was a kind of a group effort. It's not just the software. It's not just the AI part. It's the whole organization working together to improve their own workflow, right? Making things better. So anyway, I won't go on and on about it, but that's some of the potential that's there. All right, the next thing that we're going to go over is what I'll call value assessment frameworks. And there are a lot of these out there, but I just picked a couple of them as a way to think about the opportunities in your organization, right? So how do you tee them up? Like, how do I prioritize one over the other? Is it just whatever the CEO wants or the CFO, or like you have a lot of competing agendas in most executive committees, and you want to have kind of a methodology actually to prioritize. And so we have two that I'm going to talk through. One is from a company, well-known kind of business consulting firm, McKinsey, and the other one is from Deloitte, right? So they're similar. What I like about the McKinsey one is it talks about, really tries to get to the value for the organization and has, a 2x2. Talks about cost, revenue, and kind of strategic alignment, strategic value. And the part I like about Deloitte is it's really trying to incorporate the risk with this ROI framework. Like, how do I get to the ROI? Sometimes you feel like you're, well, it's hard to estimate. And there's an aspect of what this is that feels a little bit like R&D, right? So it's not, these kinds of projects are not like implementing a SaaS solution, right? So there's a little bit of uncertainty, unknowns, but part of the planning process is to try and figure out what those are and to assess some of those risks. So why don't we get started? But this, the example here is, and this is my 2x2, not McKinsey's, because I'll show you theirs later. But kind of ease of implementation on the bottom and the value on the y-axis, sorry, the x-axis. And really, you're aiming for the top right for these priority initiatives, high value, easy to implement, execute immediately. Okay, so for the value assessment matrix, which is the McKinsey model, it says, start with defining the AI opportunities inside your organization, right? So identifying those things like we talked about, automating repetitive tasks, enhancing decision-making. Sometimes it's predictive analytics, demand forecasting, real-time insights, whatever those are, improving customer engagement, kind of responding to kind of behavioral data from clients or activities, automating what you can, or optimizing operations, right? So a lot of it's, real-time decision insights. Next is thinking about cost reductions, right? So, sorry, I covered that quickly. So there's cost reductions, revenue growth, and strategic value. So once you define the opportunities, then you kind of evaluate them across those parameters. Do they reduce cost? Do they grow revenue? Are they of strategic significance? Okay, and I'm going to go through each of those. So cost reduction, is there potential for automation? Does it automate manual tasks? How much cost can be saved by automating a process? Operational efficiency, does it reduce downtime? Is it faster delivery? So the other one is cost of implementation. What's the upfront investment required and kind of ongoing maintenance? So the whole cost parameter. The next is revenue growth. Does it improve customer experience? Does it reduce churn? Does it make a potential to upsell or cross-sell? Or are there new revenue streams? Again, it's kind of the revenue side of the equation, okay? And the last is really strategic significance, strategic value. Um, Competitive differentiation, scalability. This gets to a little bit of, are our competitors doing it? Does it reflect, opportunity or threat from AI? It's something to think about. Then what happens in the McKinsey value framework is you plot these initiatives on the matrix, high value, low risk, high value, high risk, and you end up with this matrix where priority initiatives, high value and low risk are actually, just on the top left, which is a little unusual because typically 2x2s or you want to be in the top right, but in the top right are high value, high risk, right? So it's more of how to consider those with risk management. And honestly, what you do is you plot all of your initiatives based on your assessments in this matrix. And then you have conversations and make the decisions there, right? So you end up with all your opportunities evaluated and based on their impact, on their value in that matrix. And then you have conversations with stakeholders and make decisions where you're going to have to discuss trade-offs, some of the roadblocks, impacts. I have this nutty looking image here because CFO, right? So where is the budget going to come from for these opportunities? And the executive team, the leadership will have to decide this kind of trade-off of value versus risk, okay? So that's why this prioritization matrix is one that I chose. So you can, that's the trade-off that people are deciding. Okay, which ones do we want to take on, and where we're going to find the budget for this. Okay, so I bring this up. Well, it's you have to get to the business value. It's super important, and that's why this other framework is interesting. The risk-adjusted ROI framework from Deloitte, again, where you go through cost modeling, time to value calculation, risk factor quantification. I know, I apologize for this slide. It's kind of an eye chart, but I'll go through an actual example and we'll speed through it. And I'm kind of running out of time. But again, since these things can feel really new, it's important that you take into account risk, right? And that you try and quantify risk as part of assessing your opportunities, right? So like that previous one I talked about, robotic surgery, way too risky, way too early. We're not ready for it, right? So what's the equivalent? That's kind of a promise or aspirational. What can you do now? Here's kind of a graphical portrayal of what this framework looks like for an AI project ROI assessment, right? So I've got cost analysis, benefit analysis, risk assessment. I have to do all three, okay? So I need one-time costs, recurring costs. I need direct benefits and indirect benefits. I need technical, organizational, and market risks, okay, to get to an actual ROI calculation, right? So, and for it to be, believable. These are the steps you would go through. Again, identify the initiatives that inside your organization, and I'm sure there's some there, right? Like people want, it's been a couple years. I'm sure if they haven't been addressed or supported by the organization, there's probably untapped demand. Talk about the cost of developing the model. You have kind of buy, build, or partner decisions to make. You have to estimate the benefits, quantify the risks, calculate the risk-adjusted ROI, and visualize and compare. I have an example I'll go through. So here's a quick overview of this framework. I apologize for these super simple slides, but very simple. How much is it going to cost for this initiative? Where's the value? What are the risks? Is it worth the investment? You might laugh, but we have clients that ask us all the time, will there be an ROI? Will there be an ROI? They, in these kinds of large projects. I've got some numbers plugged in here. Don't go into shock. It costs money to build things that are custom and solve big problems, right? So you can spend on model development, data collection, testing, validation, infrastructure. So we have just kind of total one-time setup, one-time cost of $500,000. Okay. Doesn't mean that everything costs that much, but there are ongoing costs, and there are big questions of like, are you going to buy the hardware or not? Probably not. I think infrastructure is kind of a little heavy here in this model. Seems like it's too much. There are a lot of services that could make this lower, more attractive. It doesn't have to be $500,000. Next are recurring costs, for this is closer in terms of actual cloud costs, model updates, maintenance, bringing your team up to speed, making sure it's supported, documenting things, just kind of part of the territory, I would say, of solving these kinds of technical problems. So total annual cost 115 grand. Then direct benefits, we get to labor reduction, okay, error prevention, process efficiency, and then revenue gains, right? So that's a pretty good one, total direct benefits of $1 million, right? So these would have to be calculated based on your organization, your team. It can get touchy, right? Because it touches people's workflow. And anything that involves labor reduction can be politically charged, put it that way, inside the organization. So revenue gains or making the productive people in the organization more productive might be a good place to start as well. So making salespeople, helping them sell more is always a winner. Indirect benefits, this goes to, improving customer sat, which is measurable. Operational impact goes to productivity or throughput, quality, things like that. Again, all measurable. So we had total indirect benefits of $350,000 a year. Risk, this is risk of getting it done and achieving it. What are the risks? Can we actually do it? Can we pull it off? So technical risks, data quality. I don't have enough time to talk through all the challenges with data quality. And those are things you might run into with these opportunities, right? So it might highlight some of the warts when it comes to data quality inside the organization. Organizational, getting people to change what they do, not so easy. Just not. People like what they're doing, they don't want to change. Market could just be market, competition changes, things move. There's disruption that's coming. Could be part of the risk. You run through an ROI calculation around benefits, cost, risk factor. There's the calculation. You got an ROI of 83%, which is honestly pretty good. Okay. So payback, you make an investment and pay back in 14 months. Most people would take that bet, right? That's worth doing. And it's a great proof point to the organization. We can do this kind of work. Okay. So things to keep an eye on. It's not just, make the AI work. It's also implementation, training, change management, maintain the model, keep going. What's the next thing, right? Here's kind of a bigger overview of that whole thing. I won't go through it all. Some of y'all probably prefer pictures instead of words, but I don't know, I threw this in there because sometimes it's helpful to show how this thing came together. How we end up with that ROI. That's basically calculation. So the outcome is, with this framework, it lets you balance value and risk. And I think, and to justify investments and address the risks up front, I think it's really important to speak to the risks, even if they're perceived risks by your organization. Because if the organization hasn't already gotten started, and there's been a lot of hype, right? But there is risk. And so you have to speak to it. That's why put on your seatbelt, okay? Because you're going to need it. And not everything is going to go exactly as planned. So be prepared, speak to the risks, address the risks, incorporate the risks as part of your ROI calculation, and move ahead, okay? Right, so the value is out there, you have to go find it. And yes, risk, there's no reward without risk. All right, a couple of things. I've got one last framework I want to run through because I really liked it as a way to position how this is going to unfold, right? Probably inside your organization, where there's three, and this is from BCG. It's a CEO's Guide to Maximizing Value Potential from AI in 2024. So we just made it. Deploy, reshape, invent. So what we've been talking about is deploy, enhance efficiency with Gen AI tools. Reshape is really elevate business impact by transforming workflows with AI. So it's getting much closer to the work that's getting done in workflows, and it touches more of, I would say, horizontal across the organization. And invent is actually inventing things that are new, AI native offerings, new business models, new revenue opportunities, things like that. And they talk about three pillars for successful transformation. You know, 10% of your investment around in the algorithms themselves. So you're like, oh, that's not that much. 20% in data and technology, deploying the stack. Please get the data quality up because you're going to need it. And the last part is really people and process. How does my team get better? How do I drive process improvement? How do I drive transformation? Right. So I thought this was a very thoughtful approach. And this is an even better breakdown of the outcomes, the ROI, but people are on this journey. Companies, enterprises are on this journey, and they're moving from left to right, but it's going to be uneven. All right. So, and the interesting thing is, it's not all driven out of IT. I'm not really clear where it's going to land, if it's going to be driven by IT or if it's going to be driven by the CFO. Right. So, because this has a strong focus on efficiency, but there's also a lot of opportunity, right? So it's not just the cost side of the equation like we talked about. And so the deploy part, which I mentioned, is where they are, which they talked about. Deploy tools in the market, ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, Adobe Firefly. So all these kind of tools that y'all might have run into already. And then how are companies using it? We've already talked through all those, right? So I just came across this and I thought, it's kind of validating of everything we talked about and everything else I'm seeing in there, but it talks about where people are going. So I like that as a roadmap, right? So on that approach of deploy, reshape critical functions is kind of a weird term, reshape, and invent, right? So pretty quickly, I'm almost out of time, but at Digital Scientists, we do this kind of thing. Basically, run opportunity assessments with clients, help kind of manage it, talk with stakeholders, interview people. It's a big effort. It's not for everybody, and my point here is to give you resources that people can do this on their own if that's what they want to do. Focus on the goals and challenges. Prove the business value, and conduct kind of an open and fair discovery and evaluation. For us, we get started with something that's generally 8 weeks long. We have concepts and all that are visual, but it's very similar to what I just walked through, right? So understand the opportunities, take a quick look at your data, see if you have the quality to support it. It's like you're building kind of the brains of your organization. You need to trust the data and the business rules in the brain. So anyway, a couple of things I'll just leave behind for you. The kind of deliverables that we create. This would be standard for anybody that's doing this, is keep these kinds of things in mind. So anyway, I'm kind of run out of time. I know that was a lot, and I'm just curious if there are any questions at all. I'd be happy to talk about them. If not live, I'm happy to address things by email or have a separate call. Like I said, I'm just trying to help people get started and think about the frameworks and the risks. So I want, I want to help folks in the community succeed. This is just the start of a long journey, and I think it's important that people share what's working and what's not. I don't know, and do this in a way that addresses all the concerns. Okay, if there are no questions, then we basically completed the AI opportunity assessment as part of our webinar series. So the next webinar is going to be in January, all around MVPs for AI development. So what happens when you've gone through this process, evaluated, conducted your opportunity assessment, and prioritized the opportunities, then you got to get started, right? So then you actually have to start kind of creating these low risk um, uh, MVPs, minimum viable products for AI. And it's a little bit like a stage gate process, right? So, you want something that's not gonna take a lot of investment, and you're gonna evaluate that model to see, do I have confidence in the data? Can I trust that data? How will that impact the workflow? I'll cover all of that in the next webinar. It's kind of where the rubber meets the road, right? So these first two were kind of planning, getting funding, and now let's get started and let's see if we can have an impact on the organization, right? Drive some business value. I'll have the resources and references here to share with you all. And that's all I have today, right? So unless there are any questions, I'll go ahead and sign off. But thanks for attending the Getting Started with AI, the AI Opportunity Assessment from Use Case to ROI.